Could you please state your name for the record?
Michael F. Sabitoni.
And Mr. Sabitoni, what's your position? Mr. Sabitoni, what's your position?
I am president of the Rhode Island Building and Construction Trades Council, as well as business manager for the Rhode Island Laborers District Council.
You've been handed what is known as RIBCTC Exhibit Number 1. Have you had an opportunity to take a look at it?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Is that your testimony?
Yes, it is.
It's my understanding this is a full exhibit. It's already been accepted, Mr. Commissioner. Is that correct?
Yes, it has.
Okay. Would you like to add anything to your testimony?
I believe my testimony speaks for itself.
Okay. I have no further questions for this witness. If anyone else has any other questions.
Mr. Elmer?
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Sabitoni, am I correct that in your pre-file testimony, you do not address whether the proposed facility is needed by the ISO for system reliability? Is that correct?
I don't believe I addressed reliability.
And am I correct that you also did not address what the ratepayer impacts would be flowing through to retail ratepayers in Rhode Island through the ISO-run wholesale capacity and energy markets? Is that correct?
That would be correct as well.
And is it correct that you also did not address whether cost-effective efficiency and conservation opportunities provide an appropriate alternative to the proposed facility?
That is not addressed in my testimony as well.
Thank you. I have no further questions for this witness.
Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Shaw, go ahead, please.
Mr. Sabitoni, your testimony, as I understand it, is focused on the socioeconomic impacts of this project. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so your focus is on economics and jobs, correct?
That is correct.
Have you had experience in electric generation construction projects?
Extensive, yes.
What's that experience?
Personally, in my professional capacity, as I entered the construction industry, I worked personally for 2.5 years on the construction of the Ocean State Power generating facility in the town of Burrillville. I also worked for about 4.5 years on the refurbishing of the Manchester Street Power Station in Providence, as well as the decommissioning of, the continuing decommissioning of the South Street Power Station next door in Providence. And I also worked on various distribution and pipeline projects throughout the state of Rhode Island.
Now, I think we've heard in some of the public comments that we've had that we're only talking about short-term jobs here in the nature of construction for a project that will take a few years of construction. What's your opinion about that statement?
Objection. The question is beyond the purview of what is before the PUC on order from the EFSB.
However, he's testifying in relation to his pre-filed testimony, which has been accepted without objection as an exhibit. So I'll allow the question. I'll give it the weight that it's entitled to, however.
My continuing objection to be noted for the record.
You may have a continuing line.
Thank you.
As far as the statement that construction jobs are temporary jobs, a construction career is the putting together of various projects. We move from project to project, I actually take offense to people that say that construction jobs are temporary. In addition to the immediate impact that this has for the actual construction of it, the longevity of a 2.5, 3 year project, the technical aspect of it is something that only the members that I represent have the technical skills and ability to do. In addition to that, you will also have the other work associated with it for the upgrades and the continuing investment in the grid, which also the men and women that I represent do on a day-to-day basis. So it has the immediate impact of the project itself, plus the continuing impact it has for all the men and women that I represent that continue to construct and maintain the grid, and not only in Rhode Island, but throughout New England. I'm going to also add one other thing that I heard this morning when you're mentioning the closing of 3 major powerhouses in the New England area, Vermont, Pilgrim, and Somerset. There are a considerable amount of men and women that we represent that operate those facilities, which in the next few years will then be looking for work as well. So as new projects come online, those opportunities will be afforded to those individuals that have the expertise in operating a power generating facility.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Mr. Mancini?
Yes, just a couple of follow-up questions, if I may. So, Mr. Sabitoni, is it your position from a jobs perspective that this project is needed?
Absolutely.
Okay, and how about from an economic competitive perspective, is this project needed?
I believe it's needed for the immediate impact it'll have on the construction of the project itself, or the ancillary effect it'll have on the grid, as well as one other important impact that I believe it'll have, in my opinion. It will also help with the rates in this region, which also spur further economic development when we're looking to bring companies and businesses to locate in this area of the country. We have some of the highest costs and rates in the country, and that also spurs economic development and investments in other entities that wish to locate in Rhode Island and New England.
Objection. I'd like to move to strike Mr. Sabitoni's opinion about ratepayer impacts. He's not been presented as an expert on rates.
I'll allow the answer to stand, but I'll give it the weight that I believe to be appropriate. I understand the basis of your objection, Mr. Holman.
One last question, Mr. Commissioner. How long have you been in the construction industry, by the way, Mr. Sabitoni?
30 years.
In your experience in the construction industry, based on your experience in there, what would higher electric rates do for the construction sector industry, in that industry, in terms of economic, or in terms of the construction industry?
In my expert opinion, dealing with developers for 20 plus years, it's one of the first factors that they take into consideration when they look to relocate and build a facility, a campus, a manufacturing plant, all of the work that the men and women that I represent construct. So it's a huge consideration of any entity. One of the first things that they look at when they're looking to site any location of any business.
No further questions, Mr. Commissioner.
Mr. Commissioner, I have a few whenever it's appropriate.
It's appropriate right now.
Thank you very much. Morning, Mr. Sabitoni. Mike McElroy, the attorney for the town of Burrillville. We've met.
Morning.
Following up on the questions from Mr. Elmer on what you are and are not testifying about, I think the bottom line is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that what you're testifying about is the socioeconomic impact of the proposed facility. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And are you aware that it's the statewide planning program that's been asked to render an advisory opinion by the Energy Facility Siting Board specifically on the socioeconomic impact of the proposed facility, including its construction?
I believe so, yes.
Right. And it's not the Public Utilities Commission that has been asked to render that advisory, correct? As far as you know?
As far as I know.
All right. You have testified that there will be jobs created in and around the Rhode Island area. That's on page 2 at lines 4 to 7 of your testimony. And you went on to say in that same location that you would be drawing upon a regional workforce. Is that correct?
That's correct.
On page 2 on lines 20 to 22, you said that most of the workers would be from the local area, correct?
That's correct.
Now, you would concede that a number of the workers would not be from the local area. In fact, some of them probably will be from out of state, correct?
There would be a few from out of state. History, in my expert opinion, is that vast majority would be in and around the state of Rhode Island. Vast majority.
In and around, I would agree with, but Burrillville is on the border with Massachusetts, correct?
I'll give you a factoid. Ocean State Power, probably 75 to 80% of the workforce that constructed that facility was Rhode Islanders.
Okay, you would expect would be the same percentage for this plant?
I would expect, yes.
So approximately 20% would be out of state.
20% would be out of state.
Right. What about Burrillville? Do you have any sense as to how many of the workers on Ocean State Power were residents of Burrillville?
When we looked at the membership that we have up there, I would probably say we have, counting all 17 trade unions, we probably have maybe 100 members that live in that town.
So what percentage of that would be of the workforce? I think you said maybe 600?
I could comment on, depending on, the complexity or the classifications necessary at particular times, how many actual Burrillville residents would work on that project. All total building trades, we have about 100 members.
But you don't know of those 100, which of those would be the ones that would be needed at any particular time, correct?
Not without looking at the classifications and a scope of the project and the availability of who's employed and who's unemployed at a specific time.
Has your union entered into any agreements that would assure either the workers in the state of Rhode Island or the workers in Burrillville that they would get some priority on this plan?
History shows me, in my professional capacity, that these projects are built by the men and women and have historically been built for over 100 years by the men and women of the Rhode Island Building and Construction Trades Council on the various projects that I mentioned, and the 2 or 3 specifically that I worked on personally.
All right, I moved to strike the answer. It was a very simple question. Are there any agreements that give priority to the residents of the state of Rhode Island or the town of Burrillville? That was not responsive.
At this particular time, there is none, but there are conversations that this project would most likely be constructed under a national construction agreement and/or the Rhode Island Building and Construction Trades Council project labor agreement, at which time those agreements do have union hiring halls, the unions that are mentioned in this testimony, which are Rhode Island union halls that have first priority to refer men to that project. So the answer is, at some point, yes.
At some point you expect an agreement like that, but it does not currently exist. Is that fair?
Every powerhouse in Rhode Island that's been built in the last 30 years has been constructed under a project labor agreement with the 2 I just mentioned, every one.
And did every project labor agreement give priority to Rhode Island residents?
Yes.
And did every project labor agreement give priority to residents of the host community?
Maybe Tiverton did. I'm not sure at this particular time. I'd have to go back and look at the agreements. But definitely Rhode Island, as far as the host community, could have been. Not sure.
All right. The estimates that you gave regarding the number of workers, the 600 workers, et cetera, am I correct that your estimate was based on the construction of a 1,000 megawatt plant as proposed by Energy?
I believe so.
Did you ever, you're aware that Invenergy was only awarded by ISO New England a forward capacity obligation for 485 megawatts, is that correct?
Yes.
So did you ever take a look at how many jobs would be created to build a 485 megawatt unit as opposed to 1,000?
I believe that all of the infrastructure necessary would not have any impact on the actual numbers of those estimates. As far as the actual placing of the second phase or the second generation for the other 500, I have not looked at those estimates, no.
But you would agree with me that there will be less workers for a 485 megawatt plant than there would be for 1,000?
Yes.
Right, that's all I have, thank you.
I have additional questions. Okay. Mr. Sabitoni, as president of Building Trades, have you ever incorporated local town hires into any labor agreement you had with the developer and/or construction manager?
Yes,
And would you be willing to do that in this instance for the residents of Burrillville, provided that they were qualified to do the job?
yes,
Okay. In terms of your testimony, you talked about, was referred to socioeconomic impact. When you're talking about the socioeconomic impact, were you also considering the project, the need for this project?
say that again, please.
When you're considering, including the socioeconomic impact, are you including the need for this project to members of your organization?
Yes,
In terms of employment, and in terms of, in terms of employment?
yes,
Okay. And how about in terms of the impact to the economy?
yes,
Okay. And the need for the project to the economy?
yes.
Okay. That's all I have.
Anything further for this witness? Thank you, Mr. Sabitoni.